And we'll see if it'll get the image now. On. Go. Now. Okay. That's good. Yeah, so we're live. All right, so that's it. I don't have a go live button. It just went live on its own. Well, we learn something new every day. Okay, now we're coming back. Okay, now tell me what the sound is like. If the sound is good, we'll continue. If not, we'll do it again. Everything 5x5 out there? Everybody can hear okay? And we're good to go. All right, Fractal Man, back, Mariposa is back. Feel them good vibes. Good to see you out there. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Cindy Galloway. Cindy Galloway made a great contribution to this program to help us get some equipment a couple of months ago. I failed to make an acknowledgement to that. If you're listening out there, Cindy, thank you very much for the studio upgrade. And we're good. So, as I was saying, we're talking about buying books from the autograph. And if you're buying them from Amazon, obviously they're not coming autographed because I'm not at Amazon. So I created this really cool signature card. Okay, a little signature card right here. And it says the present from the future. And it has a space for me to sign it right here. So I can put my signature there. And then you could just peel off this back and stick it inside your book. And there you get an autographed book. I am giving these away for free. All you have to do is go to my website. It's just shipping and handling, whatever the envelope and the postage costs. And you can stick them in the books you already have that you bought from me. And then you'll have an autographed copy. And it's a real autograph. I'm not going to copy the autograph. It'll be a real one. So if you'll do that, the form is on my website, on my store, brooksagnew.com at store. And you can pick these up for free. Just click the PayPal button. It takes care of the shipping and handling, and you can get yours. Thank you so much. So I'm glad the sound's finally working. YouTube has been doing strange things all week to all of the podcasters. Really been strange. I was listening to RDoc last night, and it was half an hour of just messing around with different settings, and it was just quite frustrating. So this is a brand new broadcast. We'll trash the other one that just had a couple of minutes on it. Let me give you my Religion of Peace report again. In the last 7 days, the Religion of Peace conducted 38 attacks. In 38 attacks, they killed 221 innocent people. They injured 141 innocent people and conducted 2 suicide blasts. And yes, I am going to mention the Beirut bombing just a little bit. Just interesting little twists and questions about it that'll come out in the news. And we have a pretty packed show tonight. It's not really a show. It's more of a program because we do analysis and commentary here. And I will address any question that you put into the chat room. If you have a question you want asked or answered, all right, the chat room moves pretty fast sometimes. If you'll put your question in all caps, I'll be able to see it and I'll address it live on the air. And of course, you can always use the top chat at the bottom. That highlights your question in big color and it moves up the chat line a little slower and it gives me time to see it out of the corner of my eye. And it's always a great way to help us here with the expedition moving forward. So let's talk a little bit about Michael Flynn. He says, we are witnessing a vicious assault by enemies of all that is good. And our president is having to act in ways unprecedented in decades, maybe centuries. Hi, Festus. Okay, Life Dweller, thanks for following instructions. Says, how do I make myself unstupid? That's the easiest answer I'm going to have all night. listen to this program. This program and following me on social media will treat, cure, and prevent the disease of ignorance. Oh, that's how you make yourself unstable. It's a great place to educate. The Bible, the biblical nature of good versus evil, a lot of people, they discount that. They think, this is just greedy people in Washington trying to line their own pockets. But, it goes way beyond that. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Adam Schiff, Nadlis, these other cartoon characters that you see in Washington, they're already as rich as they can be. They're old, they're decrepit, they have no lives. They're totally married to what they're doing. Seriously. And they're cheating on their marriage. That's how deep and dark this club goes. It's all about power, all about control. Even though President Trump has really great ideas and he wants the economy forward, he wants to help students that are tied down with student debt, he wants to help people like me who would love to have my tax money back for the rest of the year. That puts about $5,000 in my pocket. Yeah, about $5,000 in my pocket between August 1st and the end of the year. That's my money. My money that they're taking away from me. And President Trump is going to make that portion of the tax relief permanent. In other words, it's not deferred if he gets reelected. It's forgiven. If he doesn't get reelected, well, then we're going to have to pay it back and then some, because there's about $3 trillion worth of taxes that are behind that with the Democrats. Hi, Byron. Good to see you out there. And Boo, I couldn't do this without you. Great job as moderator in there. I don't know where my other Blue Wrench moderators are tonight, but Stoker says, stupid is as stupid does. Life dweller, you're here. You're not stupid. That is exactly correct. William, good to see you out there as well. It's Marxism. Okay, that's what we're talking about. It's Marxism. And it is in the form of Antifa and the Black Lives Matter marketing plan. I don't want to call it a movement because it isn't a movement. If it was a movement, by God, there'd be black people in it. But there aren't. They're all white people. They're all white female college students out there in Black Lives Matter because it's a marketing plan. It's a marketing plan. It gives you the authorization to go out there, put a mask on, burn things, tip things over, smash glass, throw bricks at cops, and then complain and cry when you get hit with a pepper bomb. Anyway, it's that versus our very capable and very underappreciated law enforcement professionals, the vast majority of whom are fighting to provide us safe and secure homes, streets, and community. When the destiny of the United States is at stake, and it is, make no mistake about it, the very future of not just this country, not just your state or your community, the entire world is threatened. Why is that? Because there's one thing and one thing only that stands between global tyranny and peace and tranquility, and that is the armed American. Yeah, it's our armed forces. Yeah, we got 275,000 active duty and about that many reserves and about that many National Guard out there. Wonderful. Those guys are great. They're trained. They're ready to go anytime. But there are 150 million of us. There are 150 million of us armed in this country. We have over 2 billion rounds of ammunition, more than any army in the entire world. Nobody could take over this country by force. Couldn't happen. Not even our own government can take it over by force. It's the armed American that stands between global tyranny and peace and tranquility. And I will tell you right now, if guns were the problem, you would already know about it. They're not. And as Christians, as Americans, shouldn't we act? We should. We recognize that divine providence is the ultimate judge of our destiny. Achieving our destiny as a freedom-loving nation, providence compels us to do our part in our community. We're not spectators anymore. It's to this. It encourages us in this battle against the forces of evil to face our fears head on and stand shoulder to shoulder with our president. No enemy on earth is stronger than the united forces of the armed American. Right? We are freedom-loving people, and we can no longer pretend that these dark forces are going to just go away just by, praying about it. Prayers matter. Yes, prayers are good, but remember, there are 3 levels of prayer. The first is the ritual prayer. Pray over your food. Now I lay me down to sleep. You pray just your ordinary prayers. Largely, they go to the ceiling and come right back down. They make you feel good. They don't go anywhere. They don't do much. There's a ritualistic prayer department in heaven, and they listen to those while they're filing their nails. There's the second level of prayer, and that is where we pour our hearts out for ourselves. Please deliver me a job. Please let me out from under this oppression. We pray for ourselves. And sometimes we get loud about it. Sometimes we beseech God. You know what it means to beseech? It means to forcefully urge, forcefully ask. There's a department that listens to those too, but I would say both of those people are pretty with the other world. Those prayers don't get answered very much. Very rarely. And then there's the third level of prayer. And the third level of prayer has a full-time staff that listens for them. They have an action team that moves on these prayers. And that is when we pray for others. When we beseech, when we urge, when we pour our hearts out for others, that is when prayers are answered. When we pray for our president, don't you doubt for a moment that those forces don't go to protect him, to guide him, to make sure that he makes the right decision. We're not praying to him, praying to God to bless the president, make sure he makes the right move, keep him safe, make sure that he can see into the future and see the ramifications of the decisions that he is making on our behalf. And he does. Yesterday, at that press conference, when he signed those 4 executive orders, it was amazing because they were simple. They were clean, 1 or 2 pages, super targeted, taxes, relief, just focused on the things that the people need. He read several things that were in this, 1,800-page bill that the Democrats are trying to pass. The crazy things that were in it. Forced universal identification-free mail-in balloting. That means anybody. That means a ballot mill in Beijing could crank out tens of millions of ballots and send them here. No signature, no name, just votes over and over and over and over again, all filled out, sent in, dropped in, and they would go. They would be counted. Or they wouldn't be counted. See, that's the thing. Once you have an election that 20%, 30%, 50% of the votes have to be thrown out, that means it's a painstaking process to go through all of those ballots, decide this one's bona fide, this one's not. And then if the Democrat loses, you know exactly what's going to happen. Wait a minute. All those ballots over there in that 9-yard open top, that 30-yard open top, heaped up, ready to go to the incinerator. We got to bring all those ballots back. We got to count them. Our guy lost. All our votes are out there in the trash bin. You know exactly what's going to happen. You know it. President Trump mentioned that in his press conference yesterday. I could just tell you this action is needed at the local, state, and federal level. Action is also required in the economic, media, clerical, and ecclesiastical realms. Decide how you can act within your abilities, stand up and state your beliefs, be proud of who you are and what you stand for, and face head-on those community leaders who allow dark forces to go beyond peaceful protests and destroy and violate your safety and security. Churches and houses of worship must return to normal. We invite everyone of goodwill to not shirk their responsibility and instead act in a fraternal fashion. If for no other reason or with no other ability, act in a spirit of charity. We cannot disrespect or disregard natural law along with our own religious liberties and freedom. General Flynn says, I am witnessing elderly people lose their connection to all that is good in their lives, connections to their faith, their families, and their individual freedoms, especially the simple act of attending church, something they've been doing for decades. Let's not be intimidated or fear those who cry out that we are not. Good is always more powerful and will prevail. Not in the short term. We always come back. Evil will succeed in pockets, in localities, for a while, but only when good people are divided from each other and from their personal lives. Children away from their teachers, preachers from their congregations, customers from their local businesses. America will never give in to evil. Americans work together to solve problems we always have for over 400 years. We do not and should not ever allow anarchy. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
Extendivite, a 7-herb combination made from garlic, cayenne, hawthorn, bilberry, ginkgo biloba, valerian, and milk thistle. Extendivite feeds our body with the right nutrients to keep us healthy. Just listen to what Arthur has to say.
I was just calling to tell you what a great product you have. I had used this about 10 years ago after I had congestive heart failure. And it fixed me up and got me going for the last 10 years. Lately, I've been having heart trouble again, so I placed another order because this was the only thing that ever worked. I just wanted to let you know that you have a great product.
To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Hey folks, guess what the #1 phrase that Life Change Tea receives by email? You ready? We love this tea. We love this tea. Time after time, week after week, we love this tea. Life Change Tea gives you more energy, a beautiful cleansing, and fulfills its slogan perfectly. The tea that makes you go. So if you want to be on your health game, log on to getthetea.com and order Life Change Super Tea. Packages come in a 1-month supply, and when you brew this stuff, wait until you see the results. Aren't we all about the results? And with a lot of people's health struggling, we can use a little bit of help. Doctors will tell you disease starts in the gut. So log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Be our next email saying, I love this tea. I love this tea. Get the tea at getthetea.com. helping America one tea bag at a time.
True initiation is an inward journey. It's a spiritual path that is totally inward. It has nothing to do with anything external to you.
I want to determine if the grand architect is indeed what I believe it to be, which is the artificial intelligence.
The initiatory path is one of self-discovery and self-revealing. It's not a journey that someone can hold your hand through.
Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take you through the steps of initiation. Remember, you are divinity.
Step Beyond the Veil with Chris and Sherry Geo.
Fridays and Saturdays,
7 p.m. to 10 p.m.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are EFR, your protection from deception.
Welcome back. X Squared Radio's second half of the first hour. I've had a caller on hold out in California for a while. Sorry to make you hold so long. Had a little bit of monologue troubles there. Let's go ahead and bring them on. California, you are live. What is on your mind?
Brooks,
How
I
are
hope
you?
my audio's coming in good. You're sounding great. I had a real concern that I wanted to bring up about the electronic ballots, and I just know we're going to see this. You know, the mail-in, the absentee ballot is safe, but when we go to the polls, when the virus ends November 4th, and at the polls, we're going to see a lot of angry female crazy liberals taking ballots and segregating the Republican ballots from the Democrat ballots.
Yeah,
And
that may be very possible.
Yeah.
I don't know if the ballots are actually marked on the outside. I think they are. The absentee ballots are, but about the mail-in ballot. The mail-in ballots are going to be mailed out to people. They can't begin to do that until about, I'm going to say, the 18th or 19th of August. And the reason is because the Democrats haven't had their convention yet, so we don't know who the candidates are yet. We don't know who the nominees are. There's still primaries to go. You know, Ilhan Omar's primary coming week.
Yeah.
So once they know who's going to be on the ballot, then they can send out the ballots. But we need to stop that before it happens.
Yeah. We know Biden's not going to be.
Well, Biden isn't on it right now. You know, a lot of people don't know this, or they don't realize this, but they keep calling Biden the presumptive nominee because he is.
Yeah.
He's not the nominee yet.
No, and he has no intentions of running. It's just it's going to be the most unusual, flaky Democrat liberal show, I think, of 2020.
Well, you know how they always say, if the Republicans don't win, you know, then there's going to be a civil war. But we've seen already what happens in the last, 3.5 years. If the Democrats don't win, what happens?
Well, they'll probably try to execute as many good Republicans as they can.
Well, at least they're going to keep doing what they have been doing. They're going to burn down cities and turn over cars and smash police vehicles and beat people up in the neighborhoods, and that's we're seeing that happen. We're just only seeing it happen in crazy liberal Democrat-run cities.
Yeah, I've already been fighting back, and I mean, I've been, I walked by where they were protesting, and just very calmly announced, 30% of the group here that you're all protesting are going to end up on the no-fly list within 3 weeks.
Wow!
And you'll be notified, and you'll be notified 6 to 8 weeks. By the way, courtesy of the Defense Department, we are willing to fly you anywhere out of the country, socialist country of your choice, and we'll fly you out there for free.
Free of charge. Sure, why not?
Not a taker. I just felt like blowing some steam for the day. And
well, I appreciate you calling. Thanks so much.
It's nice. All right, thanks.
All right. By the way, what I have here on the screen in YouTube, if you're watching me on YouTube, is the conference that's coming up the 26th of this month. It's called Meet the Venusians. It has, a lot of good speakers out there. I know most of these people. It's going to be out at Mount Shasta, so if you're within driving distance of the place, it would be fantastic to see you. Go to my website, brooksagnew.com, brooksagnew.com, and click on the upcoming events tab, and that will allow you to get a discount. Sign up through that Eventbrite link, get a discount to sign up, and it's go. So I'll be very, very happy to see you out. Transfer to the screen. So I need you to get out there. I need you to be aware of what's going on. Pay attention. What's going on with President Trump and what is being said and what is being written, what is being passed is very important. Bomar, nice to see you out there. Yeah, free trip to Sweden. That would be a good way to go. It's cold there. Wow. Diane, good to see you. Wait, I vote absentee. How is it marked? The absentee ballots are plain on the outside. You do have to have the signature validated on the inside. So you sign it, you have to have someone in your household sign it that they know who you are. And if they're at your same address, it's no problem. If it's some other registered voter, that's no problem. It's just that signature validates your signature. Absentee voting has been going on for a long, long time. I voted absentee. Several members of my household have voted absentee. Sometimes we've been out on jobs in other states, and we still want to vote as a registered voter in the state of North Carolina. But most of the time, I prefer to vote in person. If I vote on election day, I go up and stand in line at the elementary school. If I vote in advance in the pre-voting, then I go to another location not far from here. But I prefer voting in person. I want to feel the line of people. I want to see what's going on. I know in 2016, the line was almost around the block for pre-voting, and it was that way every single day, Monday through Saturday. And I was very surprised that our Republican governor lost that election. It was very peculiar. All the Republicans won except him. And we've had this gunslinging, loose cannon, corrupt Democrat governor for the last 3 years, and it's driving our state crazy. Fortunately, we have veto-proof majorities in the House and the Senate that are Republican, and so we've been able to keep him from being too crazy and spending most of our money, but he's still been pretty crazy. As you know, he cost the city of Charlotte over $200 million by forcing President Trump to move his convention to Jacksonville, Florida. And then the folks down at Operation Corona Scare made sure that Jacksonville had a spike in infections, and so they canceled the convention there as well. So there's going to be a Republican convention. There will be one here to do the nomination and maybe make a few speeches. It's still going to be sizable here in North Carolina, here in Charlotte, but it's not going to be full-on convention. canceling the convention was what the Democrats wanted because they know the bump that the candidate gets when they have their convention. So if they could force the Republicans to not have their convention and the Democrats go ahead and have their convention in Milwaukee on the 17th of this month, they think that they'll get a bump and we won't. That's the plan. I swear that's the plan. But here's what's going to happen. And I would love so much to have a ticket to this convention. I would sit up in the rafters. I promise. Mostly I would behave myself. But what I want to see is the nomination process. Because as you know, the Democrats canceled all their primaries. They canceled all their caucuses. Which means no candidate could get the votes. That means that there is no nominee for president from the Democrat Party. We have a presumptive nominee, which is China Joe Biden. But remember, Bernie Sanders has delegates. Elizabeth Warren has delegates. Little Peter Buttcrack, he has delegates. They didn't give them up. They're still hanging on to them. And what happens in the convention is they vote. All the delegates come to the microphone and they say, the delegates for the state of New Mexico pledge all their electors toward China Joe Biden. They're not going to say that, but I mean, they could. It wouldn't make any difference. The point is, what happens if Joe Biden doesn't get 50% of those delegates? What happens if doesn't reach that 1926 delegates? What happens? Well, I'll tell you what happens. Joe Biden doesn't get the nomination. That first vote comes and goes. You don't get 50%, it doesn't happen. And then what happens? It goes to a second vote. Well, but the rules change. Once you go to a second vote, everybody comes back. Spartacus comes back. Kamala Harris comes back. Klobuchar comes back. Pocahontas comes back. Little Peter Buttcrack, they all come back. They all have their speeches ready. They all have their campaign money ready. If China Joe doesn't get up on that stage, or if he does get up on that stage and pees his pants, pees through his diaper there on stage, he's not going to get the nomination. You can't get the nomination and not go to the convention. You can't get it. You can't get the nomination from a hospital bed, from a hospice care. You can't get it. It doesn't work that way. You have to show up for the game. Democrats will cry foul. Because at the end of the day, yes, they are all Democrats and they do walk in lockstep. But at the end of the day, the Democrats are the party of greed. The Democrats are the party of personal pleasure and self-gratification. And when they get into a situation, and I will tell you right now, the most dangerous place in Washington, D.C., I know what it is. Seen it. The most dangerous place in Washington, D.C. is between Chuck Schumer and a microphone. You don't want to get there. I'm telling you, this personal greed, this personal avarice, or some kind of power. It doesn't matter if it's all great ideas. If their name's not on it somehow, it ain't going to happen. They have to be involved. They're not going to nominate Joe Biden. They're not, because Joe Biden's not a leader. Joe Biden is a failure. Each one of them, each one of those candidates knows in their heart, in the fire in their belly, that they would be a better candidate against Donald Trump than Joe Biden. I'm just telling you. Nope, no new callers out there. I am watching. I'm flipping back and forth between the call board. I am. So if you want to call in, you're perfectly that. The answer, Mike, when do the delegates become free agents, is after the first vote. The first vote comes and goes, and no candidate gets 50% of the delegates. There ain't no nominee. Right then, it's a free-for-all. I mean, the stripper glitter falls out of the ceiling, and they start dancing. And that's just It has happened. It's happened several times. 1940, 1968. It's a real show, a real show to watch. That's why I'd love to have a ticket to it, just to see, just to see. All right, I said I was going to do this. I want to talk about the truth about Hiroshima. You know, we have songs written about it. We talk about Harry Truman. We talk about how brave he was to use the atomic bomb against the Japanese to end the World War II and save American lives. I was taught that. You were taught that. You read that in your history books, right? I'm going to tell you the truth. Every year during the first 2 weeks of August, the mass news media and many politicians at the national level trot out the patriotic political myth that the dropping of the two atomic bombs on Japan in August of 1945 caused them to surrender and thereby save the lives of anywhere from 500,000 to 1 million American soldiers. Not have to invade those islands and fight for every foot. Opinion polls over the last 50 years show that American citizens overwhelmingly, like between 80 and 90%, they believe that history. They believe that I just told you. Which of course makes them feel better about killing hundreds of thousands of Japanese civilians, not soldiers, not military targets, civilians. Mostly were women and children, and saving American lives to accomplish the ending of the war. Well, the best book ever written, or one of the best books ever written, in my opinion, to explode this myth is the book, The Decision to Use the Bomb. And it's by an author named Gar Alperovitz. Okay? Because it not only explains the real reasons the bombs were dropped, but it also gives a detailed history of how and why the myth was created that slaughter of innocent civilians was justified and therefore morally acceptable. The essential problem starts when Roosevelt's policy of unconditional surrender was put out. Unconditional surrender means the other side can't have any terms. No terms. You come, you sign, or we bomb. And it was reluctantly adopted by Churchill and Stalin. Remember, they were our allies. And President Truman, because at that point Roosevelt had died, he had a massive stroke and died in his 4th term in his conservatory. Hang on a second. Note I have to read. Let's see what we can do about it. I'm going to try my best to turn the volume up without flipping everything. So I'll turn the volume up there, and we'll see if that works for you all. Does that work a little bit better? Can I get a yes or no from the chat room? Is that a little bit better, a little bit louder for you? Just making sure I can control things. Give them hell, Harry. Exactly, Diane. There was a lot of that out there. And, you know, Harry Truman was a dynamic personality, but he was behind the scenes until President Roosevelt began to not be able to show up to the game. A little bit like what Joe Biden is going to do. Only he's going to do it much earlier if he becomes the stark fact is that the Japanese leaders, both military and civilian, including the emperor, they were already willing to surrender way back in May of 1945 if the emperor could remain in place and not be subjected to a war crimes trial after the war. This fact became known to President Truman in May of 1945. Japanese monarchy was one of the oldest in all of history, dating all the way back to 660 BC. That's a long time, a long dynasty. The Japanese religion added the belief that all the emperors were in the direct descendants of the sun goddess, Amaterasu. The reigning emperor, Hirohito, was the 124th in the direct line of descent. After the bombs were dropped on August 6th and 9th of 1945, and their surrender soon thereafter, the Japanese were allowed to keep their emperor on the throne, and he was not subjected to any war crimes trial. So why? And why? The emperor Hirohito came to the throne in 1926 and continued in his position until his death in 1989. Since President Truman, in effect, accepted the conditional surrender offered by the Japanese as early as May of 1945, the question is posed. Why? Why were the bombs dropped if the surrender had already been accepted? Well, the author gives us an answer. The quote: "We have noted a series of Japanese peace feelers in Switzerland, which OSS Chief William Donovan reported to Truman in May and June of 1945. These suggested, even at this point, that the U.S. demand for unconditional surrender might well be the only serious obstacle to peace. At the center of the explorations, as we also saw, was Alan Dulles, chief of OSS, the Office of Strategic Services Operations in Switzerland, and subsequently he became the director of the CIA when it was created. In his 1966 book, The Secret Surrender, Dulles recalled that on July, actually the 20th of that month in 1945, under instructions from Washington, I went to Potsdam Conference and reported there to Secretary of War Stimson on what I had learned from Tokyo. They desired to surrender if they could retain the emperor, blah, blah, blah. It is documented by Alperovitz that Stimson reported this directly to President Truman. Alperovitz further points out in detail the documentary proof that every top presidential, civilian, and military advisor, with the exception of James Burns, along with Prime Minister Churchill and his top British military leadership, urged Truman to revise the unconditional surrender policy so as to allow the Japanese to surrender and keep their emperor. And all this advice was given to Truman prior to the Potsdam Proclamation, which occurred on July 26, 1945. This proclamation made a final demand upon Japan to surrender unconditionally or suffer drastic consequences. Recall that Trinity had just recently been a success. That is to say, the atomic explosion at Trinity. Truman got the word, the device works, but the war was over. No need to drop it. Germans, they had already surrendered. The Japanese already surrendered. Another startling fact about the military connection to the dropping of the bomb is the lack of knowledge on the part of General MacArthur about the existence of the bomb and whether it was to be dropped. MacArthur didn't know anything in advance about the dropping of the atomic bomb until the very last minute, nor was he personally in the chain of command in this connection. The order came straight from Truman himself. He wrote the executive order. Indeed, the War Department waited until 5 days before bombing of Hiroshima even to notify MacArthur, the commanding general of the U.S. Army forces in the Pacific. Need to know, right? He didn't. Imagine that. Alperovitz makes it very clear that the main person Truman was listening to while he ignored all of the civilian and military advice was James Burns, the man who virtually controlled Truman at the beginning of his administration. We know who controlled President Roosevelt. It was Harry Hopkins. Burns was one of the most experienced political figures in Washington, having served for over 30 years in both House and Senate. He also served as the United States Supreme Court Justice. He had it all. And at the request of President Roosevelt, he resigned that position and accepted the role in Roosevelt administration of managing the domestic economy. Burns went to the Yalta Conference with Roosevelt and then was given the responsibility to get Congress and the American people to accept the agreements made at Yalta. When Truman became a senator in 1935, Burns immediately became his friend and mentor and remained close to Truman until Truman became president. While at Potsdam, while at the conference, the experiments proved successful, and Truman advised Stalin that a new massively destructive weapon was now available to America, which Burns hoped would make Stalin back off from any excessive demands or activity in the post-war period. In other words, the Soviets were steaming for Japan. Truman secretly gave the orders on July 25, 1945, that the bombs would be dropped in August while he was en route back to America. July 26, he issued the Potsdam Proclamation, or the ultimatum. Conclusion drawn unmistakably, evidence presented is that Burns is the man who convinced Truman to keep the surrender policy and not accept Japan's surrender just so the bombs could be dropped, thereby demonstrating to the Russians, to the Soviets, that America had a new forceful leader in place, a new sheriff in Dodge. A secondary reason was that Congress would now be told why they had to make secret appropriation to the Manhattan Project, a huge expenditure, justified. They wanted the money for the nuclear weapons program. They wanted to create a permanent war culture. If the surrender by the Japanese had been accepted between May and the end of July of 1945 and the emperor had been left in place, as in fact he was even after the bombing, this would have kept the Soviets out of the war. Russia agreed at Yalta to come into the Japanese war 3 months after Germany surrendered. In fact, Germany surrendered on May 8th. Russia announced on August 8th, exactly 3 months thereafter, that it was abandoning its neutrality policy with Japan and entering the war. Russia's entry into the war for 6 days allowed them to gain tremendous power and influence in China, Korea, and other key areas of Asia. Quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like The Christopher Everard Show, The Covert Report with Susan Lindauer, Enemy Within Radio with Tom Barnes, Freaky Friday with The Woo Crew, The Gematria Effect with Zachary Hubbard, America's Evil Genius with Travis Cook, Phoenix Rising Radio with Phoenix, Quantum Connections with Lucky, and dozens more. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117 or call into your favorite show toll free at 833-TFR-LIVE. Uncensored talk and news you won't hear in the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
Will there be a legal challenge? I'm Joe Chiro, Fox News. Democrats stepped up their criticism of President Trump's executive orders he signed for more economic relief during the pandemic, and many are saying they're unconstitutional, but they also say they're still willing to negotiate.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says despite President Trump's actions on payroll tax relief, evictions, and unemployment aid, there are still points to be discussed.
It doesn't mean that we have things in there that we would cut out. It means that we could talk about how long our provisions would be in effect.
Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said he would talk on relief for Americans and payroll protection for businesses, but
they've refused to do that until they get their $1 trillion for the states.
Both appeared on Fox News Sunday. Democratic leaders called the president's actions meager, providing little real help to families.
Fox's Gernal Scott. More violent protests are expected in Portland after another night of unrest.
3 officers were hurt in last night's protest. 2 were taken to an area hospital and later released. Police say protesters set a police union building on fire. Protesters blocked traffic from getting near the building and destroyed security cameras on the property, but fire crews were still able to extinguish the flames. Protesters also hurled glass bottles at officers and tried to injure some of them by shining green lasers into their eyes, which is a crime in Oregon.
Fox's Christina Coleman. Gasoline prices have remained flat over the past 2 weeks. Industry analyst Troby Lundberg.
The current average price of regular grade gasoline nationally is $2.25 per gallon, and that's just the same price it was 2 weeks ago, because several other things did not change. There was really nowhere for the price of gasoline to go but stand pat.
There's been little change in crude oil prices, along with a lack of demand right now. America is listening to Fox News.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network. TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back. X Squared Radio, second hour, coming to you live from the America Free Radio studios through Truth Frequency Radio Network, where the Truth Freaks hang out. And we're not afraid to let our Truth Freak flag fly. We're also on YouTube Live if you'd like to friends see as well as hear the program and be part of a pretty active chat room. I'm going to go to the phones here in just a second, but I just want to let you know on September 9th, 1945, Admiral William F. Halsey, commander of the Third Fleet, was publicly quoted extensively as stating that the atomic bomb was used because the scientists had a toy. They wanted to try it out. He further stated the first atomic bomb was an unnecessary experiment. It's a mistake to ever drop it. Albert Einstein, one of the world's foremost scientists, was also an important person connected with the development of the atomic bomb, responded, and his words were headlined in the New York Times. I quote, "Einstein deplores use of atomic bomb." Point is, atomic weapons have only been used one time against humans, and we're the ones that did it. And that is something for which we must pay, I think. I can't tell you how it changed the world. 2,600 plus times we weapons up around the planet. Terrible weapons. Changed the world forever. And we're the ones that drove that. A lot by the Chinese, a lot by the Soviets since then, but that technology was discovered by it. All right, let's go ahead and go to the phones. We got Austin, Texas, holding out. Austin, Texas, welcome to the program. What's on your mind?
Glad to call in, Brooks.
Nice to hear your
I
voice.
made a comment about
What's going on in the the unfree republic of Austin, Texas?
I don't even recognize my hometown anymore. It's just, it is nuts. It is nuts.
I worked down in Dallas for.
Everybody here is from somewhere else. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I worked down in Dallas a couple of times over the years, and I liked Dallas. I even liked Houston, but Austin is like Oregon. It's crazy, so liberal. It's really unbelievable, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's always been left leaning, but I mean, we had a pretty good thing going for my generation anyway. What it used to be when I was a kid born into this, you know, in the late 50s, I've seen quite a few changes for the positive and for the negative. Here lately, and people have just lost their mind here. My neighbors.
What do you think drove the changes? What do you think drove the changes? Was it the college community, or was it outsiders coming in? What do you think drove those changes to create a liberal Austin in the middle of red Texas?
Well, like I said, it's always been left leaning. You know, even though it is the capital. The news media, I think, is plus everybody being from somewhere else now. You know, California has emptied out. I can't blame anybody for running from California. I can't blame anybody that wants to come live here. But, you know, leave your crazy ways at home, or wherever you came from.
What do they say there?
Give our lifestyle a try.
Yeah, they say, "Don't California my Texas."
Pretty much. It's not just California, though. I mean, there's people from everywhere here now. With, you know, Dell Computer being here, lots of tech. It's brought in all kind of people, which is fine. But there's a lot of people that culturally don't mix. And
well, where do you see it going?
People don't have to do it.
Where do you see it going from here? How do you see? Do you think mail-in ballots are the universal mail-in ballot with no ID and none of that? You think that's popular in Austin? Are people wanting to do that, or do they want to vote in person?
I'm scared to say it publicly, but I'm afraid they're going to lean toward the mail-in balloting, no ID, no verification, no nothing. It's growing up, my dad was always involved in the local elections. So he worked in our local precinct, our elementary school, and you know, all of that is just totally changed now from the way it used to be.
You know, I often say that when there's a frontier, where there's a place for free Americans to run, a wilderness, another frontier to go to, there will be peace, because most Americans are peace-loving people, but we're also cheek-turning people. If you strike us on the face, we're going to have patience and turn our other cheek to you. If you strike us again, you might pull back a stump. But if we can move away to somewhere else and avoid a fight, we will. But when we run out of frontier, we run out of places to go, and you still attack us, we're going to turn and fight. Feel that way?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that, you know, we're afraid of that fight. We're afraid of that fight because we don't want to see our country fall into civil war again. But I think that there are those who really don't like America. They want America to fall apart one way or the other. They want the Trump economy to be smashed one way or the other. They welcome the fight because they're not the ones that are going to be in it. They're going to send all these young people that are in Austin. They're going to send them to battle. They're going to send them to be hurt and to die.
Well, I'm going to get a lot of ugly comments about this, but man, we've got several generations of people. I've spent the last decade trying to unlearn everything that I thought I knew. because it's all turned out to be wrong.
Yeah, we were just talking about the dropping the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, you and I, we heard the same history, but the truth is, we never had to drop that bomb. We dropped it because we wanted, some kind of new strong advantage in war. But you know what happened is Harry Hopkins sent that nuclear technology using our own Lend-Lease program, sent it to Russia. And the Rosenbergs, they got the blame.
There's an author, he passed away a couple of years ago, named Jim Marrs. And after reading his books, along with a lot of others, Jim Marrs was the one who really woke me up. I mean,
yeah.
The German people lost the war. They definitely lost. The German people lost World War II, and they surrendered. But we imported all the Nazis straight into our intelligence program. We had no intelligence support for the East, so we basically just, with Operation Paperclip and a lot of others, we just imported all the Nazis that were in place in intelligence there straight into our CIA. I think it was OSS back then.
Right, OSS, and then the head of OSS became the head of the CIA that they established then. And really, it was, Central Intelligence, but really it was a professional organization that meddled with and corrected forces of other people's governments. We were messing with other people's governments.
Yeah, still are.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Still are.
I know there are a lot of bad players out there, but the bad players are not as institutional as they used to be. You don't have the Soviets, you don't have the Marxists organized the way they were. Now we have the CCP, but we have a lot of rogue players, like what we saw happen in Beirut this week. That was a stash of ammonium nitrate that got blown up. I don't know who blew it up, or if it blew up by accident, or if they blew it up because it was discovered. But that was a weapons supply for Hezbollah. That's what the CIA is paying attention to. Hezbollah, Hamas, all of these rogue players, they don't have uniforms. They don't have institutions. They don't have governments or representatives in the UN. They are just dangerous.
Well, I believe the CIA's got internal fighting going on just as well.
Yeah, that's pretty much true. I mean, CIA is full of bad people catching bad people. It's often said it's hard to recognize Hasper, that's the female head of the CIA right now, when she's not carrying her channel locks.
Yeah. I was surprised at that one.
Yeah, well, it's, President Trump, if nothing else, sticks to the kind of order of succession. He doesn't necessarily take in some rogue outsider and put them as head of the CIA. He takes someone who's been there all along and lets them move up in the ranks. Now, if he doesn't like what they do, he is very quick about firing them. I mean, when he went to Afghanistan and discovered that Jim Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, was lying to him about how long it would take and what it would take to get rid of ISIS. He learned that on the ground by surprise. No one knew he was going. And when he came back, President Trump fired Jim Mattis. Gone. Once President Trump finds out you're not doing the job he hired you to do, you're gone. And I like that about him.
Oh, I do too. I only believe it to a certain degree, but to a large degree. I don't know that I fully believe that.
Well, he is one guy. He is one guy, and he's got a lot of staff, and I'm sure the staff is lifetime bureaucrats, and they're advising him on what the protocols are and what we normally do around here. But President Trump is, I think he's done very, very well for the first 4 years of his presidency.
I do too. The day after the election, we were all sitting around talking and chuckling. At least we have at that time we had the illusion of hope.
Yeah, well, a
Had
day
it
after
gone
the
the other way,
election,
Costa Rica was looking real good.
the day after the election, I went down to the CVS here and I bought all the tissue that they had in stock, and I handed it out to all my liberal friends. They were crying.
My roommates, they were at the time they were women. It was ugly at my house. You could feel the heat just when I walked in. Just the disgusting. And then I think the next morning they had that women's march, whatever that was, with all the you know what hats.
Yep.
And there was a big to do, with all that here in Austin.
Oh, I lost a lot of respect for so many talented women that day. I lost so much respect for them.
Yeah, and somebody that surprised me, and I don't know that I fully trust what she's doing, but I was surprised that Madonna spoke out the way she did about the COVID deal.
Yeah,
I know you weren't on that public.
America's been pretty good to her. Made her a very wealthy woman for being right on the ragged edge of her art. And it just surprised me that she would come out and say that she thought a lot about blowing up the White House.
Yeah, but did you hear what she said just the other day?
No, maybe you did. Refresh me.
In regards to the COVID virus?
Fill me in.
She doesn't fully believe. She agrees that there's something going on, but that it's not it shouldn't be the mass hysteria that they're pumping it up to be.
Well, the thing about the coronavirus, it has always been, for hundreds of years, it's been a fast spreader. It spreads very easily, and humans are susceptible to it, and we don't build up long-term immunities to it because it morphs, it mutates so much. But it's clear. Right. It is clear. When I call this Operation Corona Scare, I mean it. This was a very high-level, highly well-marketed operation to do one thing and one thing only, and that's to smash the Trump economy. The Trump economy was doing too good, and they needed something to destroy it. It's kind of interesting that it came out in, what was it, the cartoon show. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was put out in 1989, and it talked about a disease, using a disease to shut down the economy of the opposing party.
Well, didn't Warner von Braun, when he was talking with his the female assistant, but it was his main assistant, didn't he explain to her how all this was going to go back in the 70s?
Yeah.
They would use the war on terror. They would use the medical scares. When everything else played out, the communism deal collapsed and all that, that eventually the last card that they would play would be the fake alien invasion.
Well, listen, I really appreciate the call. I got two other callers waiting. I want to get them in before the end of the segment, and I really, really appreciate the call. You call back anytime. You're welcome anytime.
Well, appreciate you chatting.
All right.
I'll go back to listening. Thank you much. Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Be safe out there.
All right, let's go to New York. New York, you're on the line. I'm sorry, Nevada. Nevada, you're on. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm from New York, not Nevada.
Oh, it is NY. See, it's a weird font. Anyway, what's on your mind? I love New York.
Yeah, I want to know your opinion on who do you think's really ruling this world?
Wow, that's a big one. Well, I call it the global syndicate. I address it in my book, Charm of Favor. The global syndicate is not run by one human. I think that maybe there might even be a Nephilim at the head of it, some ancient intelligence. I alluded to this several times. It's hard to come out and say that in public, to say, there's some fallen angel at the head of this effort. But the reason I say that is you can go all the way back for over hundreds of years, and the tactics, the strategy doesn't change. It's laid down decades in advance, and by and large, it's followed. And humans are not like that. Humans are very greedy. They're very egocentric. They want their stamp on it, their idea, their brand on it. And so it changes all the time, but not this strategy to rule the world, to control the world. And I often wonder to myself, why would you want to do that? Who cares about feeding the world or taking care of their health care or collecting their taxes? Who gives a rat's behind about that? It has to be something greater than that, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it goes back to hear a lot of conspiracy theories, but I think they just say that to get you, to get the people off the target. If this is true and there's reptilian aliens and they've been ruling, what chance do they really have? I mean, how do you beat these guys? It's all rigged and fixed.
Well, it is, but you remember, we're eternal beings having a mortal experience. So that has been tried before. They've tried wiping us out before, just using their advanced weaponry and just destroying, Atlantis and Lemuria. But then we come back, and they recognize us. They know who we are. One of the most important things to the dark side, I know a lot of people don't pay attention to this very much, but I do. The most important thing to them is their genealogy, their bloodline. It's important to them. Why? Because they have to have certain DNA so their demons can come in and take a body. And that's why when you look at the bloodlines of these people, it's the same, going back thousands of years.
Yeah, but if these aliens are superior than us, they could wipe us out at any time. I think they're just playing with us through the centuries.
Well, it's because, as I said, we keep coming back. What they really want to do is they want to conquer our soul. And the only way they can conquer our soul is if we, through our own free will and choice, choose their way. If we choose wickedness, then they have us.
Yeah, but the media, anytime you mention religion or Jesus, ever, they put you right down. It's as if they're protect. They don't want the people to know what the truth is, and that's really discouraging.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. And you look in history, you can see where, from time to time, the people are forbidden from going to church. They're forbidden from singing. They're forbidden from praying in public. They're put to death for doing it. They realize that the difference between them winning and them losing is the spirit that we have of charity, of love, of long suffering, of kindness and benevolence toward our fellow man. They want us to fight. They want us to be greedy. They want us to lust after one another, to molest children, to break our marriages, to break our core family. That's what they want to do.
Yeah, I want to ask you about another thing. Do you think that the government would ever admit disclosure that there really are, aliens out there and they don't want the public to know about it?
Well, I think there are two governments. I think we have an unelected government, which is a ocean of bureaucrats. I don't think they will ever disclose. I think they would rather burn the place down than disclose. The elected officials, from time to time, they would like to disclose, but they are a temporary fixture in Washington, especially the president. Yeah, he's powerful for 8 years, but these bureaucrats have been there for 83 years, 84 years. They've outlasted every president. And so even though the president orders this information to be released, the bureaucrats are the ones that hold it. They have it, and they're not releasing it. And the Pentagon is one of the most...
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, my opinion is the government could never reveal that there's, aliens, because once they do that, they're going to open up a can of worms, and then they're going to have to admit that the aliens have been abducting the people, for years, and that's going to turn very ugly once they find out about that truth.
And it could be that Eisenhower is the one that made the deal with them. You give us a little bit of technology, we let you abduct a few humans and do whatever you want to do with them.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much horrible stuff. I mean, I just found out today from you about this, setting off this atomic bomb that Japanese actually surrendered. I never knew that. I thought that, why did they have to send 2 atomic bombs? I thought Japan was never going to surrender. This was news to me.
Well, the reason that they dropped 2 is one was an atom bomb and one was a fusion bomb, a hydrogen bomb. So 2 different levels of technology. And I asked that question myself. I have a degree in nuclear chemistry. I held sand in my hands from the original Trinity explosion. So I know this story. I'm pretty close to, or was pretty close to, one of the officers, Marine officers, that was in charge of security over the Manhattan Project, over the team. So I know a little bit about it. They didn't want the bomb dropped. They were commissioned to split the atom and make sure that it worked. But they didn't want the bomb dropped. And to drop it on civilians was
yeah,
it just blows my mind. And the fact that they had surrendered all the way back in May and we dropped the bomb in August, it just blows me away, just like it does you.
Yeah. Brooks, I know you got a lot of calls, and I just want to end on one more thing. I want to change the subject. The French Revolution, do you think that happened by accident, or do you think it was a deep state operation?
I think it was a deep state operation because they wanted to take the royals out. And anything that had anything to do with the royals, because there were actually good royals, the ones that happened to be in the line of command, they were corrupt, but they were good royals. They took them all out and beheaded them. What the French Revolution proved to us is those people that start a revolution are never the people that finish it.
Yeah, because I see the same thing happening today with the United States of America. They're sort of following the same, the same pattern.
Yep. We're going to take a quick break. If you want to hold through the break, that's great. I appreciate your call so much. Thank you.
I'll call you next week. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, Earth Explorers. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. More X Squared Radio right after this.
From the dawn of man, we have turned to nature to help attain balance within ourselves. But somewhere, we lost our way. Western culture is once again remembering the healing benefits of CBD, the non-psychoactive component of the hemp plant. That's why more and more people who use CBD report relief from inflammation and chronic pain, balanced blood sugar and cardiovascular system, relief from muscle tensions, tremors, migraines, headaches, anxiety, depression, and the list goes on. The big question is, where do you get it? Life is a 99% pure CBD oil made with all organic ingredients, and it's available to TFR listeners worldwide. If you use coupon code TFR at checkout, you'll get $5 towards your order. Head on over to ialife.com now. That's AYA life.com.
Hey, it's Grace. Can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's doctor daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at nature'syouth.com. Nature'syouth.com. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
More than a dozen astronauts have officially reported UFOs. Hundreds of hours of UFO footage were filmed by astronauts aboard the space shuttle. Many of these UFOs can only be seen in ultraviolet light. Retired former Apollo astronauts and cosmonauts now tell their stories of their own personal UFO encounters.
The Enigma Channel, intelligent television for planet Earth. EnigmaTV.com.
Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
I've been waiting for this moment since my first breath in. Never would have thought I'd be afraid to begin, but here I am, the edge of the water, wondering if I can swim. Never seem to notice all the days pass through, but in this final moment, I'm still chasing the truth. I want an explanation why I can't stay here forever in my youth. And if I press on, will you wait? Will you wait for me forever? Or would it be wrong to ask you to come with? Tell me, will you wait?
All right, welcome back. More X Squared Radio coming at you. Got a caller on hold out in Tennessee. I believe this could be the one and only Lucky. Welcome to the program. How are you? How's the work out there?
Oh, I'm exhausted, but it's work, and it's a special project, and there's somebody trying to call me now, but I'm ignoring it for now. Sorry, I'm off the clock. Good evening. I miss everybody. I really do, and I miss talking to you, too. It feels like a year.
I know,
that I've been gone, but it's only been a few weeks.
Yeah, you miss a couple live programs. It takes a lot out of you. So you're working on this special project you're working on. I know it's taking a lot of hours, but it's going to end pretty soon, and then you'll be back in the chair.
Yep. Yes, indeed. And I'm going to see what I can do about scheduling myself some time to do that. But, when you're in charge of people, they demand a lot from you. And they have to. I understand it, so it's a responsibility, so you got to do that. But the thing is, and I miss doing news, to see brief things, what's going on in the world and things like that. And it's just amazing. I'm just so glad that you're still in the chair, continuing your work, so I can know what's going on out there. Because it seems like there's a lot. It seems to slow down or tempered itself a bit, except for the mask thing. Now they're threatening people that if you don't wear your mask, you get fired. But come on, guys. This thing is not going. The mask is not helping. That's my belief on it. No, it's not my belief. It's a fact. Okay. Anything less than 2.2 microns can get through the mask.
Well, I will tell you.
Okay, and that's what viruses.
I'll tell you some facts about wearing a mask. There are people out there that wear a single-use mask. They wear it for a couple of hours to do whatever it is they have to do, and then they take it off and they throw it away. But the vast majority of people that I see, they're either putting on these reusable masks, these designer masks with different, bedspread patterns or political statements on them or whatever.
Yeah.
Let me tell you that you're breathing into that mask, and bacteria is growing on the moisture that you're breathing into that mask. If you use that mask over and over again, you risk getting a staph infection. And if you've ever seen a staph infection of the face, it is really hard to get rid of. It's like acne from hell. If it gets under your teeth and gets to the bone, gets staph infection of the bone, it's almost incurable. And this is a bacterial infection that occurs, that festers inside these masks. So for God's sake, take the mask off, especially in public. You don't need it. If you have to have it for your job, that's one thing. They'll provide you a single-use mask. I have to wear one at work myself, but I only wear it for a couple of hours during the day, and then I throw it away.
Well, another thing too is a lot of people are not realizing that they can also get Legionnaire's disease.
Oh yeah, that's another thing, Legionnaire's disease, because
that's a case that's happening.
That's a respiratory infection that will kill you.
Yes. And the thing is that I have discovered, because I do have to wear a mask when dealing with people. When I'm by myself, I don't have to wear it, of course. But when you're dealing with people, you have to wear a mask. And I noticed that it feels like, because it gets humid really quick, especially those of us in the South, it gets so humid and damp so fast. It feels like a hand is covering your nose and mouth. And It's very difficult to breathe. And that's the cloth mask. And it doesn't take but 20 minutes for that to get damp. So, and the thing is that gets me about it is that even the CDC, up until the older publications, even state do not use masks for viruses. So is this a virus or not? Is this a cold or not? I'm talking with a lot of different people from different walks of life, who some people are pro-medicine, pro-pharma, pro-everything. They're like, well, we got to do it because of this. And people will shy away from you if you don't have your mask on. It's very strange what's been done to our society with this thing.
Yeah, and it's not just
some
a
people
virus.
That shy away.
It's not just a virus. It's also solitary confinement. They're putting a clamp over your face so that it shuts down your ability to communicate one with another. I see people in the grocery store wearing masks. They don't talk to each other in the store. It's silent. Nobody wants to talk to one another. Of course, I don't wear a mask. And sometimes they look at me with disdain, but I think they look at me with jealousy, like, man, I wish I didn't have to wear a mask. All you have to be is free.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And I think that I think what because we need to just assert our freedom and our sovereignty. And these particular regions and counties and cities that are requiring it and threatening a fine, people seem to not understand that that's a violation of the Eighth Amendment. Those fines, you're not supposed to be fined and punished for unduly. Like, for instance, I think back in the day it was like $25 was the max. Now we've got $1,000 fines, $10,000 fines, according to governors. That's a violation of the Eighth Amendment, and that's when the federal government should be stepping in to ensure that the constitutional rights of every American is not violated.
It's all about oppression and control. And, I went to a restaurant the other day, and they had a big folding sign outside, no mask, no entry. So I walked in without my mask. And she said behind her mask, I said, what? I said, well, I can't read your lips. I'm hard of hearing, so I don't know what you're saying. She said, I can't serve you without a mask. I said, well, that's a $75,000 federal fine. You sure you want to go there? She said, what? I said, yeah, that's a violation of the American with Disabilities Act. I have a medical condition, so I'm not wearing a mask. I'm going to go 20 feet right over there and sit down at that table, and I'm not going to wear a mask while I'm eating or drinking either. And she said, what's your medical condition? I said, that's another $50,000 fine. That's a violation of HIPAA. You cannot ask me what my medical condition is. I have medical privacy in the United States. That's 2 violations. You still want to continue with this? She sat me. No problem.
Awesomeness. And I'll tell you another thing that I do like about Trump. Okay, I have to bring it up. I do like about Trump. He just passed that executive order about deferring tax payments for those who make under $100,000 a year.
Woohoo! That puts a whole bunch of my money back in my pocket. I'm happy about it.
Well, for now, okay, because don't forget at the end of the tax season, you're going to have to pay that.
No.
You'll have to pay it back.
No.
Deferred.
He said if I'm reelected, I will make it permanent. You will not have to pay this back.
Wow, if that's what I call buying votes, that's doing it right.
Hell yeah!
Okay,
you can buy my vote with my tax money, absolutely.
And think about it. Look at all the benefits that the stimulus packages. It was $1,200 at first, and now there's supposed to be more coming in. Plus unemployment benefits. There's a lot of people not going to have to pay tax on that.
Well, I'm excited about it. I'm very excited about it.
No federal income tax.
Because I'm working and drawing Social Security for the rest of the year, and I'm going to have to pay taxes on that Social Security money. I don't now.
Right. And so this is a good thing. I mean, that's going to stimulate the economy. You think about how much money people are going to get in their pockets.
Well,
they're going to spend it.
It was funny because the reporters were saying, well, how are you going to pay for this? Hey, don't worry about it. We have the money. You know, remember when we were talking about this huge omnibus bill that he passed? It was like $1.3 trillion. And it was like, President Trump, why are you signing that? Well, he can't, decide what gets spent where. Congress does that. But he's the one that decides whether the money gets spent or not gets spent. So I have a feeling there's a lot of money left over from that $1.3 trillion budget that never got spent.
Yes, that's a fact. Because Pelosi was called on it by a reporter. I can't remember her name. I don't remember who it was, but it was a reporter. And on the news, live on the news, he asked about that very thing, that Republicans were talking about the fact that the money the first stimulus has not been spent yet. Where's the money? Where's it going? Where's it sitting? And Pelosi went off on the reporter. She said, are you going to start talking about that? You're going to start taking sides and about the Republicans. She's like, are you going to start talking like the Republicans? I'm not going to get over it. I'm like, holy crap, this woman's crazy.
Yeah, she
and
is.
The reporter was asking a fair question. She wasn't accusatory or anything. She said, Republicans have said this. What is your position on that? That's all she said.
Yeah.
And now the reporters are starting to see how things are going with certain parties or certain people in that party. So that's a good thing, too. The fracture, everything's been fractured in our society, which I think is kind of good because we were standing on bad foundations anyway. And now that those foundations are all shaken, we're talking about the sports industry. We're talking about the church industry. And it is an industry.
Sure.
We're talking about the Hollywood industry. I mean, all these things have been fractured. People have lost respect for the I hate to say it, but the institutions that seem to be the buttress of our society.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that all of these things needed to be reformed.
Exactly, to include police officers and things like some of the practices that they had. But what I find also is very funny about this. All these people have been wanting, police reform, the behavior of the police. Bad cops need to be reported. They need to be on a list and blacklisted from any future law enforcement work.
I agree.
The bad ones. Okay, that way the good ones still have work.
I totally agree. That way you can't go from one sheriff's office to another state and join
Precinct to
another
another.
law enforcement and strap on a gun again.
And do the same thing. Right. So what's happened, though, is now that there's so much abuse being done to police, what's happened is it's turned the tide of compassion or sympathy for the police to include the bad ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry about that. And
well, listen, I can let you go. I got a couple callers.
What I mean to say is,
I have a couple more callers stacked behind you, Lucky.
No problem.
But it's good to hear your voice, and
Right,
hopefully we'll get to see you Monday.
I hope. Oh, not tomorrow. I'm sorry, it's not happening.
All
we
right.
got slammed.
All right.
But anyway, I'll try.
All right. Thank
All
you
right,
for calling
love you guys.
in.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's go to Atlanta, Georgia. You are on the program. What's on your mind?
Good evening, Brooks. Long-time enjoyer of your intelligence, your work. Right. And I've got a comment, and then I've got a question for you.
Sure.
First of all, as it relates to Trump, I find it fascinating that those who are trying to shut down history, rip up what has been and change it into something that they feel that it should be because it's more appropriate. And I got to say, anytime somebody uses the term political correctness, I mean, that's an oxymoron in and of itself because anything that has to do with politics is, to me, you say politics and my brain turns off because you're starting from a position of an ideology, one side, the other, or something that you've made up on your own that already has a closed mind and is going to be difficult to get any facts inserted in there so that you can have a reasoned, rational conversation, which is one of the things I've admired about you for a decade. But fascinating to me that if you read The Art of the Deal and you watch The Apprentice, that what you're seeing in the Trump presidency is exactly in those two pieces of work that he has done for the last 20 plus years.
I couldn't agree more.
And it's as plain as the nose on your face. And it's fascinating to me because it is exactly, I've said for at least a couple of decades that while the U.S. is not formed as a business, it functions as a business, and it's needed a business-minded individual to be in that seat to correct the gap that has collected and become a cacophony of nonsense last several decades. So to finish that comment, I think that what we're going to see will be called the Trump Pump in November, and it will be in such epic proportions that in and of itself it will become an entire piece that will be taught in sociology and psychology courses and people who curate that information in the future.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. To try to organize disorganization, to try to organize chaos, which we're seeing in the streets of Portland and Austin and other places, New York, around the country. Try to organize chaos and make it a political force is a huge mistake of the Democrats. What Republicans have done, and I think what Donald Trump has done masterfully as a manager, is he has identified and correctly labeled both sides. He's labeled Americans as long-suffering and patient and family-oriented, and they want to be successful. And he's labeled the Marxists as open borders and everything that's wrong with any society. And that labeling process, I think, has been successful. And when you couple that with people like Brandon Straka, who started the Walk Away campaign, Candace Owen, who came on the scene, changed from a Democrat to a Republican, huge impact in her community. This is a wave. This is a wave that I think is going to wash the sewer out to sea.
I completely agree. And I think one of the subtle things that he's done, particularly in his imaging and the projection, is he's taken, you know how, the Marxists and communists, going back to Stalin and Mao in particular, what was their main color of their message? It was red.
Yeah.
He has hijacked that into using it for, the Make America Great slogan and position. And I think it's so subtle, but it's also one of the many masteries of, you go back into The Art of the Deal, you can see how he did that within The Apprentice. He would assemble people, put them into teams. They would, or he would, combine, select somebody to lead. And then you see what has happened with Falsey and the people that he's let the people who were the leaders or the supposed experts get up in front and expose themselves. And that is one of the pieces of the masterful parts in The Art of the Deal.
Yeah, I love that part about him. He
just,
lets his enemy destroy themselves in public.
It's just absolutely brilliant. And I think that the people that suffer from the TDS or Trump obsession syndrome or however you want to position it, they are so caught up in their emotional hemophilia, and which is obviously also immaturity, that they can't see in front of them what's really good.
Yeah, that's a really good term, that they
prophetic.
They can't control the bleeding. It's true. And even if they make a lot of money, they go through it so quickly because they have no organizational skills. When you look at the money laundering operation that Joe Biden had, China Joe, with Ukraine, pumping $1 billion loan guarantee into all the nonprofits and show corporations in the Ukraine, which was notoriously corrupt anyway, and letting some of that money leak back out into the Biden empire, that was exposed. And he exposed it himself on TV. And I just, I think the reason that President Trump hasn't really gone after him yet is because, technically speaking, he's not the nominee yet.
Well, that, and I think also to the point you were just making that, we're both agreeing on, is he's letting his enemies expose themselves. And the longer Joe, hangs out in the bunk, pops his head out and use whatever the hell it is that's coming out of between the empty cranium between his ears, I mean, he doesn't have to do anything. I mean, he really just needs to let Joe be Joe, and that includes literally the entire left deal ideology, which one of the things I'm a child I was born in the 50s, child of the 60s and 70s in Southern California. Part of the original the original libertarian or liberal movement and progressives. And our message back then was screw the man and leave us alone. The liberals and progressives today have turned that, they spun it around 360 several times and ended up 180 degrees where we started. And what is notable to me is that they have noble goals. I mean, who doesn't want free health care for everyone and free money for everyone? And, if I could, beam me onto Star Trek where there's none of the strife and it's only the pursuit of the individual development and excellence. But you have to have a system, you have to have processes, you have to have methodologies to get there. That's one of the major problems with the ideology on the left, in my opinion, is they've got goals, but they have no idea whatsoever how to formulate a system to get to those goals so that they are definable, repeatable, and sustainable.
Well,
and
you and I grew up. You and
I
grew up in exactly the same neighborhood, Southern California, and our icon of health on TV was Jack LaLanne. Now, Jack LaLanne,
though, I had that stretchy thing, and I was with him every chance I could.
he didn't talk about health care. He talked about health. He talked about eating right and exercise and keeping the weight off. And, I think health is a lot more important than health care. I haven't had health insurance probably.
Well, isn't that one of the biggest things that one of the biggest things missing from the public discourse from the experts, who, by the way, have been spectacularly wrong across the board from the beginning of this thing, is the immune system and building up health.
Yeah.
All they're talking about, again, just like, the traditional allopathic medicine approach, is treating the symptom, not the cause. And I think at the end of this, one of the most profound and excellent things coming out of this pandemic is the fact that there are more people that are more aware of their own personal health habits and improving their immune system and learning about how you can fight off pathogens just by being healthy and having the right balance of nutrients and minerals and elements within your own system.
That's absolutely correct.
We're sliding up. There's one really important question I want to ask you about.
Yeah, sure.
Did you see, or are you aware of the? I think his first name is Stephen Quantz, who is a retired Air Force general who did a presentation. I think it was at Hillsdale College last November, and he came out, and it's about an hour and a half long, but there's a 5-minute segment where he talks about 4 technologies that he personally knows that are out of development and off the bench. They're going to, I think, and if he's correct, this, what I'm calling the soaring 20s, once we get through this nonsense that's been hoisted on the entire planet. And they are these. The number 1, there is a device that I can put in your hand that will give you all the free energy that you'll ever need. Off development, off the bench. 2, there's another device that I can also put in your hand that will give you all the water that you need. 3, here's another device that will give you communications, not like we have today in modern cellular and communications, the internet, a completely brand new way of communicating. I think it's probably based on Tesla's work and the ether. And 4, the ability to, not quite teleportation, but the ability to be anywhere on the planet within 1 hour. So he said those 4 that he has seen himself. He worked directly with the engineers that went through the development and then got it off the bench, i.e. meaning it's now in a productive manufacturing model. Did you hear about that or see it, and do you have any thoughts?
I don't have any knowledge about any of that. I've heard rumors of 1 or 2 of those devices, the water and the energy, but not the other 2. We're going to go to break right now, so I've got to put you on hold again, but I will try to answer those questions after the break. More X Squared Radio, top of the hour. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm 10 years old. I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
They might face a legal challenge. I'm Joe Chiro, Fox News. Democrats are saying the series of executive orders President Trump signed yesterday are unconstitutional and they've hinted that those orders may be challenged.
They claim these actions will not do much of anything to boost the economy, and they are encouraging the president's staff to return to Capitol Hill to negotiate further.
The president's meager, weak, and unconstitutional actions further demand that we have an agreement.
It's unclear if both sides are going to get back together, but of course they all agree that there is still a need to help Americans with the unemployment rate still above double digits at more than 10%.
Fox's Mark Meredith. The executive orders are intended to continue some economic relief during the pandemic after Congress deadlocked on a plan. The Biden campaign says the former VP will reveal his choice for a running mate sometime this week.
He enjoys just the second to last weekend of only being the presumptive Democratic nominee. Once he becomes the nominee in a week and a half, a lot of things are going to change, and still don't know where in Delaware Biden plans to accept the nomination with a speech, but the plan is for the DNC to beam out 2 hours of content 4 nights in a row next week. We expect it to be slickly produced stories told by the party's biggest stars like Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. And the night before Biden speaks, his running mate will address delegates virtually. It's not clear yet if that running mate knows she won the Veep stakes.
Fox's Peter Ducey. A suburban Atlanta high school plans to start the week with all classes shifting online after 9 students and staff tested positive for coronavirus. The North Paulding High School made headlines last week with photos posted to social media that showed hallways crowded with students who weren't wearing masks. The school year opened with in-person classes last week. America is listening to Fox News.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
All right. Greetings, Earth Explorers. Final hour, X Squared Radio tonight, coming to you live to the America Free Radio Studios, somewhere east of the Apple Mountains. If you are one of the owners of one of my books you bought off of Amazon or Barnes & Noble, you might want a signature inside of it. There's the signature card. I had these printed up. I will personally sign this to you. See, it says the present from the future. And you can peel off the adhesive back and stick it right inside your book. And that way you can have a signed copy, even though you didn't see me at a conference. They're free. I'll send them to you for shipping and handling. Go to my website, brooksagnew.com, brooksagnew.com. Go to the bookstore, and it's right there in the middle. Just click the PayPal button, pay the shipping and handling for the envelope and the shipping, and I'll sign it and send it to you for free. So I was talking to Dr. Bauer, who's down in Atlanta, and he asked me some interesting questions. I'm going to bring him back on just for a second. These 4 devices, we do know there are 2 companies, OneWeb and Starlink, that are putting CubeSats out into space. And these are going to provide a different kind of internet. We're not going to be connected to like a router or a cell phone tower. You're going to be connected directly to the satellite. And I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work. I don't know that existing cell phones will be able to do that without cell towers. But the idea is to take the internet, which is right now kind of controlled as to who gets bandwidth and who doesn't get bandwidth. I know I lived in a neighborhood. In fact, I had a manufacturing facility about 12 miles from here, and we couldn't get internet. We could not get internet in the industrial complex because there was no cable coming in. Now, they were perfectly willing to bring a cable in for $21,000, but we didn't want to spend that kind of money.
Just like the old ISDN. Just like the old ISDN days back in the 90s.
I know. In fact, that's what they wanted to put us on was ISBN. So we ended up getting a wireless router, and it sucked. From noon till about 3:30 in the afternoon, you couldn't even get on. It was just insane. It was insane. It was the worst internet. We had to finally close the plant. We couldn't do business. Just couldn't do business. We were using our cell phones as hotspots so our laptops could send emails out and stuff. It was ridiculous. So that technology is coming, but I'm not exactly sure how the satellite interface is going to work. The free energy one, that is always been an elusive one. I have EV Fleet, which is my electric truck company. We have a inventors portal page, and we're probably the only manufacturing company that has one. If you have such technology, we will actually manufacture it if you have a working prototype. I have to tell you, Dr. Bauer, it's been 11 years we've had that portal up. I've not had one single company come forward with a prototype. All had good ideas. They all wanted money to develop their prototypes. And I said, well, actually, you have to have a working prototype to qualify for the program. No one's been able to do it. The looking glass technology is the only thing I can think of that actually looks into the future. The reason it's not widespread, the reason it's a closely held military secret right now is because it would disrupt the stock market. Having worked for a brief period of time as a guest at both laser interferometer gravitational wave observatories, those have the fastest switching computers in the world. I've seen them. They have to, in order to tie the two facilities, one in Hanford, Washington, one in Livingston, Louisiana, together to work the instrument. But the reason that is so top secret is because if that computer switching systems got in the wrong hands, they could take a look into the future about 50 milliseconds to 125 milliseconds ahead of the stock market. And they can actually head fake the market and make billions of dollars. So that's why that technology is so closely held.
Do you think that this change in, I mean, we're also obviously through a massive reset across the globe, economy, the financial markets. In fact, what I'm calling this the knowledge apocalypse, which has a subtitle, The End of the Curated Narrative. And everything that I look at in any knowledge domain that I've studied over a couple of decades, I get into it. 50% of what I find is questionable at best and needs to be re-examined. And I think that what we're seeing is that actually unfolding in front of us at this very time. So if the financial markets, economies and so forth, are going to go through this reset, then could the stock market be a part of that reset?
Yeah,
the
it
way
could,
that
it could
money
be.
is traded.
It could be, because I'll tell you what happens, and I've had several business startups, so I know what I'm talking about here. The financial community, that is to say the banks, central banks, they took steps to squeeze business startups out of the market. We're at the lowest level of business startups, and we've been in this country since the 1675. It's unbelievable. Starvation, pandemonium. It's poverty and devastation out here for business startups. Why? Because there's no investment capital. That's why it's so critical. This executive order that President Trump signed yesterday is going to give capital gains tax cuts to investors who will pour money into these startups. That's what's missing. And that's what's got to reset in the stock market. Right now, the stock market has been self-preserving. They have squeezed out all the competition, and they naked short any competition that comes on the market. And so it's been a boom for them, an absolute boom. And of course, we've tied our retirement funds into the stock market, and the banks, since the repeal of Glass-Steagall in 1993, they have become part of the gambling process as well. So this is the game that we have, and it needs to be reset. Absolutely.
Do you think that Trump bringing the Fed in under the Treasury is one of the first starts?
Absolutely.
Start
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that he's been able to appoint several of the board members of the Fed, he now controls the Fed, bringing the Fed underneath the Treasury, you know what's going to happen. He's going to say, well, let's write off this debt. Exactly what any businessman would do. Are we going to pay the whole $26 trillion back? No, because we've been paying you interest for decades, eons on that money. We're going to pay it off, and we're going to have you take a haircut. We're going to write you a check for $8 trillion, and we're calling it even.
And isn't that, I've heard you mention this on previous shows, isn't that leading to something along the lines of a jubilee?
I think it is. This is kind of what the people call Nasara, but it's not quite that broad. What we're basically talking about are prime market debts being forgiven on both sides. It's sort of like, I owe you $20, you owe me $20. Technically, we're both in debt, but we could just agree and say, let's dissolve the debt on both sides. You now own your home, and I don't owe any money to Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever, and Home Depot doesn't owe money to, and it goes around. So it all resets. It doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't change anything. Gold will inflate to, I don't know, $10,000 an ounce for a while, and then it will settle right back down again, and everything will carry on. What will disappear is the control that the global financial central bank has over commerce around the world. That will go away.
Right. To your point about the free energy, don't you think that the whole idea that Trump's Uncle John signed by, I think it was Vannevar Bush, go in and grab all of Tesla's work when they found out that he had passed. Don't you think that the Wardenclyffe and what he was trying to do and got caught, or at least once J.P. Morgan said, hey, I can't put a meter on something that's free, and ceased to fund Wardenclyffe, don't you think that wireless energy is something that could be what is actually been around for a long time, but they've kept it under wraps?
Well, yeah, there's two forms of the wireless energy. One is that you have a central power station, say, in downtown, and it puts out this huge electron cloud or radio cloud over the city, and then you have radio transducers around the city that convert that radio energy cloud into electrical for local use. The issue is you're changing the environment of the city. You're putting all of the life, birds, bacteria, people, everything inside that high amplitude radio cloud. I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think Tesla did either. The other is that the realization that Tesla had, and I think this was correct, that Earth sits, somewhere around 273 degrees Kelvin. That's a lot of energy in space. He found a way to tap into that 273 degrees and convert that pulsating energy around the Earth into useful energy. Quite frankly, I think a lot of that was work in process. It wasn't done. And I don't know if they have the finishing pieces to it now that will make it safe. If it gets in the wrong hands, it could very easily be used in a Beirut type weapon.
I think that's one of the reasons we've seen the incredible information that's been held by the secret societies for hundreds of years or millennia about the real function of the way that nature and the cosmos work within consciousness, and how consciousness becomes energy, and energy manifests material we function under. It's something I'm working on that I'm calling frequency physics. I think is, when you look at all things in physics, it's all based on frequencies. And if the focus was on frequencies and the way in which they are stacked, the way in which they're cycles, the way in which they interact with one another, we would find the reality of the materium that we exist in, which would also include the consciousness that none of the experts, none of the sciences can actually explain or have any kind of rational explanation for.
Well, some can. I mean, you're talking about constructive and destructive interference, and we do understand the significance of that. We do understand how human consciousness is now one of the primary of the 5 forces in the universe, but we don't really understand how to quantify that yet, and I think therein lies the secret. If you can get 20 people that are able to concentrate in a pure way, constructively interfere with a known process, with conscious energy, there's no telling what can happen. And it's clear that the ancients had the ability to do that, and they were able to accomplish things that we think they didn't have the technology to do. But imagine what we could do today. There's 8 billion of us living on the planet. Imagine what we could do if there was unity. But I can tell you right now, as we turn up the light, it makes the shadows darker. The light is never going to have unity with the shadows. And it's said, prophesied in every book you want to read, that in the last days, we're going to see this grand division. You're going to see people on the right and people on the left, and very few people in the middle. No fence riders anymore. And that's what we're seeing. They're easy to spot now because they're the ones out on the sidewalk without the mask.
Well, isn't it fascinating that, with this global pandemic, that literally, and I'd say it's somewhere north of 80%, there was this complete acquiescence around the planet, what I refer to as the manifestation of the metamind, where everybody told that there was this invisible enemy. And for the most part, everybody just went into a self-quarantine or self-isolation, even though it became mandated. But it was initially suggested. And it was, I think, from a global consciousness perspective, one of the first times, especially with the number of souls that exist on the planet today, the first time there was a global consciousness that was sort of at least heading down the same frequency.
Well, but it was a fear. It was a fear frequency, and a fear frequency is easy to,
which is the most powerful one.
Yeah, and you have to think about it though, because this isn't the first time. You remember this same global power commanded 1 million people to leave their homes with nothing but their cell phones and their clothes on their back and walk 2,000 miles to throw themselves against our southern border and create a humanitarian crisis. Who has that kind of power? Who has that kind of power to order people to migrate en masse out of their country and walk for 2,000 miles with nothing? That kind of power is very frightening to me.
That power is he who controls the persuasion of fear.
Well, I don't think he made them afraid to stay in Guatemala. He said, if you come to the U.S. border, we'll let you in and we'll give you 40 acres and a mule. I mean, that can't be resisted. People get on trains. They risk their lives. They risk being, the women, untold amount of assaults that they went through, and their kids making this march to America and only to be turned away at the border. And the word never got back to them. Don't leave. Don't make the walk because you're not going to get in. Somehow that power was able to do that. That same power, even though it couldn't crush the Trump economy that time, the Trump economy was roaring, baby. The 20s were coming on hard.
Yeah.
Everybody was making money. Who has the power to shut the whole damn world down over a common cold?
Those who control the curated narrative for the purposes of whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish, and they have done it. And I think that, in the way that if we look at, you only focus on the negative things, it's obviously overwhelming.
For sure.
But
Look what they've done. Look what they've done. They've equated.
But I see some.
You just heard it on the news. They've equated infection with death.
Mm-hmm. And that's another part of this curated narrative unraveling. Look across the board, as I was saying earlier, all of the experts Doesn't matter what discipline. Pick a knowledge domain, what a scientific, medical, economic, doesn't matter. Every one of them have been wrong, period.
Sure.
And if people are not stopping and reevaluating the term expert and those that we give that moniker to, and if people are reevaluating everything in their lives, from their own health and their own wellness, the way in which they are contributing members of society in a positive way to help, to create, to innovate, move things forward. I mean, you have this incredible opportunity for the individuals and the collectives within those the individuals within the collective to actually be the force of change. And I think we're going to see a battle unfold. We're already seeing in some places.
Well, hopefully,
where the people are battling those in charge. Those in charge are having a hard time holding on to the reins because there's just so many more of us than them.
And what I'm hoping is that where 63 million Americans came out in 2016, that 100 million Americans will come out this time and be a force for that change. I really appreciate the call, Dr. Bauer, and I'm glad you've been out there listening all these years. And please call back again. You're a really, really good caller.
Well, thank you, Brooks. I really appreciate that. I have a show called the Nextcast. I'd like to invite you on to have further conversations about these and many other subjects.
Absolutely.
I'll send you an email.
Yeah.
And I'll look forward to it in the future.
Absolutely. I'll never turn that down. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, sir. Have a great evening.
All right, you too. All right, we got a caller on hold in, let's see here. How about Virginia? Virginia, you are on the line. What's on your mind?
Hi, Brooks. It's Robin. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great.
A couple things. Number one, I wanted to follow up on what you were talking about with Lucky on the mask. I don't see it as a mouth trap. I see it as a mouse trap, and we're the mouse.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's solitary confinement.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said it's solitary confinement. They're putting us in solitary confinement where we have only our eyes to communicate with.
Most definitely. I wanted to follow up on something about the voting, and that is I recently talked to a friend of mine I knew through Convention of States, and she had moved out of state. She actually moved from Virginia to North Carolina, and she was telling me that most interesting thing was you have to cancel your voter registration when you move from one state to the other. So to make it in summary, what she's saying is she's still a qualified voter in Virginia as well as in North Carolina.
That is correct. That is correct. But
That's
it is a crime. Right. It is a crime to vote in both states. But you're absolutely correct. When you move, you should cancel your old voter registration, because if you don't, somebody might use it in that state.
Well, I guarantee you there's a ton of people out there that have no idea that's how that system works.
Well, I guarantee you that's right. And by the way, if you get a driver's license in North Carolina or California or Illinois, you are automatically registered to vote. If you are not a citizen of this country, you're still registered to vote. It is your responsibility to go back to the election board and tell them you are not a citizen, you're not eligible to vote. You're going to find that out first time you're called for jury duty. You're not going to be able to serve that jury duty because you're not a citizen. It happened over 430,000 times in California.
Well, thanks for clarifying that for us. And then the next item is I recently sent you an email about a gentleman named Richard Mack. I don't know if you saw it or not, but he is a constitutional sheriff. He was in Arizona. He's teaching other sheriffs about constitutional rights because they are the top law enforcement officer in the county, and they are supposed to protect their people and the county and their property. And so he's going around the country and he's training them. I don't know if you've heard about him. I think he may be an excellent guest.
I did see the email. I don't know if I reached out to him tonight. I'm trying to remember if there was actual contact information for him in the email. If there wasn't, either me or my staff, we try to write these people, and we often do, and they never get back to us. We've asked several guests that I'd love to have on this program, and they just don't think we're important. I was so thrilled that Laura Loomer came on this program because she's running for congresswoman down in Florida, and she came on the program, did a marvelous job, and had a very good response. But a lot of these people, you can't get a hold of them. They just will not give a small podcast like this the time of day.
Well, I know he's doing some training sessions, and I know he's doing them in Virginia right now, and he's teaching these sheriffs about Constitution and the constitutional rights and standing up for the people in their communities, as far as social distancing and the mask wearing and the gun toting and et cetera, et cetera.
Well, you need it up there because Northam is a piece of work, let me tell you. Had 1 million people come up there wearing arms, protesting. You had the vast majority of the state of Virginia vote conservative. And what was it, 2 or 3 little cities there, precincts, that elected Northam as governor. And you've got the problems you have because of that.
Well, we had problems before he got in there, too.
Yeah, I imagine you did. West Virginia is a confusion to me, but Virginia, wow, what a state. So much heritage there.
Yeah. Yeah. Lastly, I wanted to ask you for the latest status on where you stand with your digital voting key and how that status is going.
I'm not a big fan of digital voting because it's difficult to validate eligibility of the voter himself. I'm a big fan of in-person voting with ID, and I even like the idea of a purple finger. But I don't mind opening the polls early and having early voting, but it needs to be in person. It needs to be with ID.
Yeah, I had heard you talking about we had like a window of 18 days, and I'm just kind of wondering where you stand with that.
Well, the window's smaller now because the Democrat convention is the 17th. So we're going to find out. Plus, we have a couple of primaries to go. Ilhan Omar has her primary, I think, in a couple of days. We don't even know really who all the candidates are. You know, Joe Biden isn't the nominee yet. He's just a candidate. He doesn't have the votes. He can't go on the ballot. He's still in the primaries. Their convention is the 17th, and if he wins, then he will be the nominee. But they can't send the ballots out before then. I got to take a quick break now, but if you want to hang through the break, we'll talk a little bit more about it. Otherwise, I appreciate you so much.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Brooks. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you so much. Take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. By Christine, great for heart palpitations. By Anne, before I started using this product, every afternoon my ankles and my hands would be swollen. That doesn't happen anymore. So if that part of their advertising is true, I have to assume that the rest of it is also. Not to mention that when I had my yearly blood test, only a few weeks after beginning to use this product, my cholesterol had dropped over 30 points. I'm going to continue to take it. Rock. I love this product. It really works. By Brad. Works great, thank you. Tell us your story. Get your Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite. Hey folks, guess what the #1 phrase that Life Change Tea receives by email? You ready? We love this tea. We love this tea. Time after time, week after week. We love this tea. Life Change Tea gives you more energy, a beautiful cleansing, and fulfills its slogan perfectly. The tea that makes you go. So if you want to be on your health game, log on to getthetea.com and order Life Change Super Strength Tea. Packages come in a 1-month supply, and when you brew this stuff, wait until you see the results. Aren't we all about the results? And with a lot of people's health struggling, we can use a little bit of help. Doctors will tell you disease starts in the gut. So log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Be our next email saying, I love this tea. I love this tea. Get the tea at getthetea.com. Helping America one tea bag at a time.
Jacob Frank Leibovich is the mastermind behind a global network of satanic cults. He taught that the creator God was evil. Jacob Frank proclaimed himself as the true Messiah. He vowed never to tell the truth. He rejected every moral law and declared that the only way to a new society was through the total destruction of civilization. Murder, rape, incest, and the drinking of blood were perfectly acceptable actions and rituals. His followers established the Marxist system and have infiltrated Islam and Judaism. He was the Messiah of the Illuminati.
EnigmaTV.com.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
All right. Welcome back to X Squared Radio, coming to you live from the America Free Radio studio somewhere east of the Appalachian Mountains. The August classes are now over, but the September classes have been scheduled. So if you want to be part of the Second Chance Manifestation Masterclass that I'm teaching on Saturdays, you can sign up for the September classes. $47 for the whole course, okay? It's 2 Saturdays. There are 3 classes over 2 Saturdays. They start at noon Eastern time, so it's easy for everybody in the U.S. This last week, we had members from Spain all the way to Washington State. So it's a global class. You can join. It's live. We take questions, and it is going to set you on a course to be able to accomplish those things that maybe you've been procrastinating for a while. The 2 people that I had on this yesterday for the final class are 2 people are authors, and they've written books. They just haven't published them. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to publish their books, both of them. They're going to be authors just like that. Their whole lives are going to change after that, whole lives. You can be part of it. All you have to do is go to my website, brooksagnew.com, click on the webinars link. It's right there, right at the top of the menu. And sign up. It's the best $47 that you can spend on yourself. Okay, let's get back to the phones. Let's see. We have Midland, Michigan out there. Welcome to the program. What's on your mind?
Hey,
how are you?
Good. I've got a quick question or opinion, or I want your opinion or whatever.
Sure.
I know I see one of your videos where you said like the masks limits the oxygen and pathogens grow in your throat or whatnot.
It's true. Yes, it's true. If
Okay,
if you're
now,
doing any kind of activity, walking, or you're working like on a line or something like that, you're moving around a restaurant a lot, you need to be able to take that mask off and re-oxygenate your body from time to time, because your oxygen level, your blood oxygen, is going to go from its normal youthful level of, anywhere from 92 to 98%. It's going to drop to the high to mid 80s, and you're going to notice it in redness of your skin on your arms. You could get an infection on your face and mouth. You can get Legionnaire's disease. Take the masks off. They are not working for you.
all right, now, if a person has a generator, what do
Yeah,
you think about an hour in the evening just to reoxygenate the body?
yeah. Hyperbaric chambers have been used for over 100 years, putting people in a hyper oxygenated environment to oxygenate the cells. There are also things you can take internally to increase what's called nitrous oxides. You can even drink water. There's water on the West Coast called Aquarius water that has been re-oxygenated. Normally the water that comes to you in your tap, even if you filter it, it's been deaerated. All the oxygen, free oxygen's been removed. Why? Because it rusts the pipes. It makes the pipes oxidize. That's why it's removed. You want that oxygen back in your water, so when you drink it, the oxygen, the free oxygen's in your digestive system, and it helps reoxygenate your body. So yeah, I'm a big fan of oxygen therapy. Absolutely.
Okay, so you know the machine that they have instead of the oxygen tanks.
Yeah.
If someone had access to that,
If you had access to it, they're not that cheap. You can wear them on your belt, and sometimes you see them come around people's ears, and you'll see them right below the nose. They're actually extracting oxygen from the air and concentrating it to raise the oxygen content in the air that you're breathing. So normally you're at like 21.5% oxygen. You can raise that to 25 or 26%, all the much better.
okay, so then I mean, if you were to run the machine for an hour a night in the evening when you're sitting there watching the news or whatnot, it couldn't hurt anything.
No, that's a great idea. Absolutely.
And what I do with my drinking water is I have a funnel. I have the funnel full of marbles. I pour my water over the marbles into the glass.
And the marbles are just glass marbles?
Just glass marbles, yeah.
Well, you need to wash. Well, I mean, it's
just
chlorinated water that you're pouring over it, so you're probably not going to get any bugs growing. But I would highly recommend.
Well, it's well water.
Oh, okay. So you don't have any chlorine in it or fluoride in it, so you're fine.
Right.
Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, the only trouble with well water, a lot of times it'll have a lot of iron and a lot of calcium in it, and sometimes that can discolor your teeth. But other than that, it's way healthier than tap water.
And one other question, I was wondering if someday you could have a program where just everyone could talk about prepping.
Yes, I thought
give their
about doing that.
suggestions or what.
I do talk about preparation from time to time. I do it in small increments, but I've been to several prepping courses myself. I've done 2 survival courses, one in the desert and one in the mountains, so I have a lot of experience doing it. People need to understand the difference between survival and preparation. Preparation's way easier to go through a disaster than survival.
Right. Well, I understand, but I mean, some people have some different ideas that maybe could be useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I suggest to keep 50 to 100 pounds of salt in your house.
Among other things, yeah. Salt is a
get-
good thing for preserving meat, and for other things.
Right. If the power goes out, I mean, they salted the pork and they traveled the ocean for 6 months, you know.
Yeah, they just
I
put
mean,
that ham
if the
hock on
power
the
was
back
to
of the
go out.
wagon and drag it with them everywhere they went. cut off a piece and eat it while you're on the road. Absolutely.
Right. But that's about it. And then I live in the country, but both my kids live in the city. So I had bought them. I had bought them, the kiddie pools that you blow up.
Uh-huh.
You know how the water works and with the water towers in the city. Power goes out, you've got water for 3, 4, 5 days.
Sure, because they use the energy to push the water up into the tower, but then it's gravity feed to your house.
Right. So, I mean, if you turn on the news and the power is out in Los Angeles, the power is out in wherever, and a main thing, I told the kids, take the hose, fill the pools up, then you got 150, 200 gallons of water in the laundry room or wherever you decide to put it, and then you have water to drink and to flush toilets and whatnot.
Yeah, it's important to be able to handle your waste because cholera is the first disease that shows up when you lose sanitary sewer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe we could all learn something if we had like an open line. So
I like it. It's a good idea. I'll take it into consideration. We'll do it on a Wednesday night. It's a 2-hour program, and we'll do it on a Wednesday night. I appreciate the suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah, and real quick, too, I have several cans. I've got about a dozen cans of flat black paint.
And what do you use that for?
And you know what that is for. You and I are sitting here, the power is out. Get the candles, the kerosene lights, propane lights, whatever. We're playing cards. We're having a good time. When there's no power, it's just like a lighthouse you can get for miles and miles and miles. So if you were to spray paint your windows black, almost like the blackout curtains in Germany or whatever, then your marauders or whatnot wouldn't see the light.
That's true. That is very true. You would draw attention to yourself if you're the only light on in town.
Yeah, so I don't know. Just being silly, but maybe we can learn something from each other.
It's a good idea. I like the prepper classes. I always learn a lot from them. I've been to some that the guys show up and they have this 200-pound backpack and it has everything in it, a hand crank radio. And I told this one guy, his name was Dr. Bailey, he was a chiropractor. I said, if I ever get stranded, I want to be stranded with you.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that people can do. I've got a 5-gallon bucket. You know how you pour a bucket in a toilet?
Yeah.
And it flushes.
Mm-hmm.
So I filled the bucket up 5 gallons, flushed the toilet. I filled it up 4 gallons, it flushes the toilet. I fill it up 3 gallons, it flushes the toilet. I fill up 2 gallons, it does not flush. So then I just took a Sharpie and marked it at the 3.2 gallons. So I'm not wasting water to flush the toilet.
So you know what to fill the bowl with, or the tank with to flush it.
Yeah, well, you pour the bucket directly in the bowl, but...
Oh, you can do that too, yeah. Instead of pouring it in the tank. But you can use gray water, like that's left over from doing dishes or something like that. You can use gray water to fill your commode tank, and then you can flush your toilet that way.
Yeah, I'm just saying it only takes a minute to know how much water it takes instead of, if it takes another trip for water, why waste it?
Why waste it?
I don't know.
Hey, I appreciate the call.
All right,
I'll think about doing
sir.
a show on that. Thanks very much. All right, let's see. That takes care of all the calls I have pending. Check my chat room here really quick. Yes, Bomar says cloth masks stop only 25 micron sized particles. And I got to tell you, Bomar, that's multiple layers. Multiple layers. You got to go to non-woven fabric to get down to that small 25 microns. That's about 5/1000ths of an inch, somewhere around there. That's I think I showed the video on this program of a guy vaping through his mask, right? He took the vape, put it up to his mask, drew in, and then he exhaled, and the vapors came out all over, up his cheeks, out the sides, through the mask. Let me just give this to you. If you put your mask on and you walk into the kitchen when breakfast is cooking, if you can smell the bacon, that mask is not protecting you against the virus. That's the truth. The bacon odors are about the size of the virus. If you can smell the bacon, you're going to get the disease. But the thing is, as I've been saying for quite some time, the global media empire has been tasked with equating infection with death. You just heard it on the news break. On the news break, they were saying, oh, they opened the schools and nobody was wearing masks, and they had 80 infections, 80 people tested positive. So then the next thing you got to say is, so what? 80 15-year-olds got the virus. You know who's going to be symptomatic? Nobody, because that age group is not affected by the virus. It doesn't equate to death. It doesn't equate to death. Young people don't die because of this disease. It only affects people, the average age is 78, not kids. You know, from the beginning of time, humans have used mythology to make sense of a chaotic natural world. Myths are actually the science of the pre-scientific age, okay? Folklore provided pre-scientific people a comforting sense of control over nature. They had superstitions to address dry spells. They deployed, rain dances. Sunless stretches hindered crops, prompting offerings to Helios. And then our ancestors sat back and they waited. The rains always came, the sun always reappeared, validating their wisdom, right? Thanks to science. Science! We know this was pure superstition. But we still fall for them, don't we? Through the same methods, they control us today. Today's politicians knock out and climb over one another to take credit or place blame for COVID-19 results. Do politicians really control these outcomes? Or are they simply exploiting our ingrained tendencies to believe in? When China first deployed lockdown in January to defeat COVID-19, the Washington Post approvingly quoted a Georgetown University professor saying, and I quote, "The truth is those kinds of lockdowns are very rare and they're never effective," close quote. But in March, Imperial College London's dire projections influenced the White House. But a careful reading of the advice contained in the Imperial College report reveals that its authors knew lockdown alone could not eliminate any infections. It could only delay them. I quote, "The more successful a strategy is at a temporary suppression, the larger the later epidemic is predicted to be in the absence of vaccination due to lesser buildup of herd immunity," close quote. The CDC pandemic planning documents stated non-pharmaceutical interventions such as social distancing are ineffective once a disease infects 1% of a region's population. There are no historical observations ever in history. There are no scientific studies at all that support the confinement by quarantine of groups of possibly infected people for extended periods of time in order to slow the spread. It doesn't work. It's hard to imagine that measures like those within the category of social distancing would not have been had some positive impact by reducing transmission of a human respiratory infection. But the evidence base supports each individual measure is weak. It doesn't work. Look at the flu season every single year. The TV commercials know all about it. Cold and flu season is coming. Make sure to have your NyQuil, your DayQuil, your Tylenol PM, whatever, because they know it's coming. And what happens? What happens every fall? An outbreak in Hong Kong, LA, Chicago, Houston, New York, all within hours of one another. Nobody's traveling to all those cities. It's not traveling around. There's no social distancing or social contact. There's no, typhoid Mary that's spreading this disease around. It just happens because it's already there. It just activates. Decades and decades of evidence corroborates this. In 1969, a group of men overwintering in Antarctica. That's a little remote, don't you think? Nobody flies in and out of Antarctica in the winter. It's shut down. They experienced a spontaneous respiratory virus outbreak during their 17th week of isolation. COVID-19 appeared on an Argentine naval vessel on the 35th day of its voyage. They were at sea, and they followed a 14-day quarantine before they left. I'm just saying, it doesn't work. In fact, no lockdown ever stopped a respiratory disease from spreading. Every flu season, the virus of the day races around the world in a matter of hours. The only thing that has ever stopped a virus is herd immunity. Oh, I think we have a super chat question. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Going up to see if it's up there. Let's see it. Oh, there it is, way up there. Discuss Moynihan and Doyle Clinton Foundation investigation. Department of Justice terrified. Okay, Doug, this is the deal on this, all right? I'm glad you asked this question. The Department of Justice is getting very close to the tip of the spear. That is to say, they've arrested a lot of low-lives and mid-level people. They've confiscated their phones and their contact lists. They followed the money, all right? They have found out where the tax money went and where it went through all the nonprofits. These FBI quantitative accountants are very, very good at tracing the money. They've traced it all the way to the top, okay? All the way up to the Clinton Foundation. And they know criminality has been done. And they know that people that were communicating on their databases, putting money in, taking money out, they were laundering foreign money, Russian money, Chinese money, Haitian gold, all this stuff through the Clinton Foundation. And they were flushing, that is to say, they were slushing these funds of a lot of politicians. The reason the Department of Justice is terrified right now is because they've been walking over the Clinton blood trail for years and years. Since the Clintons were in the White House, they've been walking over the Clinton blood trail. Well, now the carpet has been peeled back, and they can see all those bloody footprints on all the floors of the FBI, and they see where they lead. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are in their leadership of the Department of Justice. Christopher Wray, Rosenstein, Sally Yates. I will say this. Every single person in that January 5th, 2017 meeting in the White House, in the Oval Office, January 5th, 2017, Susan Rice, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, John Brennan, Sally Yates, and Susan Rice and others were in that meeting. Everyone in that meeting should go to prison for treason because they planned to use all 17 intelligence agencies against an incoming president. That's treason. That's treason, straight up. The issue is that of those 17 intelligence agencies, all underneath the Department of Justice, I might add, there were people that participated. They spied. They placed wiretaps. They altered documentation. They lost evidence. They withheld evidence during the entire Mueller investigation. That means that they're all implicated. That's the fear. And my feeling on this is, I don't care where it leads. I don't care. I don't care if it leads all the way to the sitting vice president. I know it doesn't lead to Trump, because had it led to Trump, they would have had him out already. I don't care if it leads all the way to the vice president. Get them all. We don't need this corruption in our government. And quite frankly, the American people have lost faith in the rule of law. And I think that many of our allies, as well as our enemies, have lost faith in our rule of law. Why? Because it doesn't apply. It applies to you, it applies to me, but it doesn't apply to them. And that's why it doesn't work. That's what's ripping our country apart at the bowels. We are bleeding to death on the inside. It's not just the money. It's not just the control and the rhetoric and the constitutionality, unconstitutionality, all this bull crap that crazy Nancy Pelosi is spewing all over the news media that we hear in between the breaks on this program tonight. It's not just that. It's that we're sick. We're sick. We have gangrene. We're rotting on the inside. And we have to remove the rot. So the Department of Justice can be afraid. But the large majority of the Department of Justice, the rank and file, the good, honest people who are good, honest people, who are good Americans, patriots, they want to see these people go down, or they want to see them go out. Get out. Get fired. Remove yourselves from the law if you cannot administer the law. And keep in mind, I do think that the Federal Election Protection Act is forthcoming. It isn't yet. He still has time. He's got about a week and a half. But mark my words, the president is going to make moves to make sure that all states have to have identification and they have to have in-person voting. Mail-in voting will be blocked. Universal mail-in voting will be blocked. And it's going to go to the courts. But I guarantee you, no mail-in votes are going to be counted, not for federal elections. You can do it for local elections, but you can't do it for president. It's never going to happen. Go out and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little bit every day. And before long, you will have saved the planet. This is X Squared Radio. I'm Brooks Agnew, saying peace, Earth Explorers. Where we go one, we go all. Now go and do. See you on Wednesday, right here on America Free Radio.